I've not heard of one example in Arizona where a business owner's religious liberty has been violated. The bill is broadly worded and could result in unintended and negative consequences. After weighing all of the arguments, I have vetoed Senate Bill 1062 moments ago.
And there is Arizona Governor Jan Brewer clearly reading from a prepared statement there, announcing her plans to veto a bill that was criticized as discriminatory towards gays and lesbians. The governor has faced a bunch of criticism about the issue, and so she decided to veto the bill. The reaction was split to the veto to Brewer's bill. Joining me now to discuss this is former Congressman J.D. Hayworth, who hails from Arizona, and David Patton, Newsmax Magazine senior editor. J.D., we were talking about this before the show here, and I'm of the school of thought that the Republican Party at this point cannot really stand even the perception of exclusion, whether it's gays or lesbians or whether it's somebody of any racial background, and that is what really drove this decision.
Well, I think more than that, this was a clear case of mainstream media malpractice. The left went in, mischaracterized this legislation. For example, the Religious Liberties Preservation Act was sponsored in the United States Senate by Chuck Schumer. So understand, this was a whole different issue, but now it has gained the currency of gay activists. And what you have seen with a sea change in terms of American corporations and social activism and some American sports. The NFL threatening Arizona to take away the Super Bowl, Major League Baseball and the Cactus League in spring training, not to mention the Arizona Diamondbacks. All of this started to play. So in one sense, you can see that Governor Brewer has to pick fights carefully, but in another real sense, and especially given Arizona's reputation, Arizona, the youngest of the 48 states admitted to the Union, Valentine's Day 1912, a heavy dose of progressivism and populism in that state constitution. Watch to see what will happen in terms of a ballot initiative to mobilize conservatives within the state of Arizona, social conservatives who obviously are very concerned with this. Governor Brewer, she cannot run for re-election, so it has no effect on her political fortunes because we don't anticipate her running again for public office. Now,
David, J.D. mentioned the media, but of course there was the statement from Jeff Flake, the senator from Arizona. You might expect something like this from John McCain, but Jeff Flake is viewed as somebody with a bright future ahead of him. He does have to run for re-election again someday. You think he'll face some fallout from all this?
No, I think he may face some fallout. I mean, when you take a stand on a contentious issue like this, you know that you're going to offend a certain percentage of your voters. The key is to ultimately take the right stance. I think in this particular case that you had a very unique circumstance. You had the business community and the progressives in the Democratic Party actually on the same page on this issue. That's pretty rare. But with an oddball sort of coalition like that, you were going to be looking at such an intense business backlash against Arizona that I believe the law would have ultimately, whether it was fair or not, whether it was a mischaracterization or not, it would have been unsustainable in my view.
If I could just go back to the politics of this for a second, because I don't want people
to
have
a
misperception. When people refer to Jeff Flake as a Tea Party conservative, that's not the case. Senator Flake is more of a libertarian who ran to the right on public issues in a very safe Republican district. But now, in the view of many, and there's really no way to sugarcoat it, some of the bloggers in Arizona refer to him as McCain's mini-me. You see very little divergence, whether it's open borders and amnesty or now this issue. And it portends, now granted, a Senate term is 6 years, but it portends some real re-election difficulties for Jeff Flake when his first Senate term is up.
All right, interesting question. Right now, we also want to bring in Scottie Nell Hughes, who is joining us on the phone. Scottie Nell Hughes is the news director for the Tea Party News Network. Scottie, it's great to have you with us.
Oh, very excited to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure to have you on. We were just talking here on the set about what this might mean for Jeff Flake, one of the Republican senators and one of the Republican voices of opposition to this veto that I guess kind of goaded Jan Brewer into vetoing this bill. What do you think the fallout will be, Scottie, for Jeff Flake next time he runs for re-election?
Well, I don't know. You know, his fallout almost pales in comparison to John McCain's. The whole country, if you're a conservative right now, already has a target on John McCain's back. That's the one thing that every person in the Tea Party can agree on. We need John McCain out. And Flake, unfortunately, seems to be following him in this standard. Very disappointed both of these senators for getting involved. And you have to wonder, Jan Brewer sat there and backhandedly slapped every member of the House and the Senate that was elected there in the Arizona legislature when she vetoed this. And she did it for some reason, which some are saying is basically her campaign announcement for either 2016 as a VP candidate, thinking that she would be able to recruit some of those folks that recruited John McCain. John McCain lost. Jan Brewer will lose because of this veto. She'll soon find out.
Interesting. David Patton, Jan Brewer as a possible VP nominee. What's your take?
To be debating possible GOP VP nominees this far in front of the election is sort of meaningless. I would suspect that that's going to be more determined based on what actually happens during the campaign. Who would have guessed Joe Biden, of all people, at the beginning of that campaign would have been Barack Obama's running mate? So obviously that's something that's up in the air. I think the larger issue for the people who had to make this decision was what it was going to be like in the media when you heard people in the media over and over again saying basically what President Obama said, which is hearkening back to civil rights, hearkening back to Jim Crow, that people were going to be discriminated against in public places. Now, maybe fair, maybe not, but I would submit in a post-civil rights era that we're still living in America, again, it just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, that's true. JD, what do you think?
Well, I'm very interested in, and maybe we can call Scottie in on this if we still have her on the line. The whole notion of going to the ballot again. Do you expect social conservatives in Arizona to mount an initiative campaign to get something on the ballot to at least go on record where the state legislature's work was invalidated with the governor's veto?
Well, if anybody knows Arizona voters that well, it'd be you, J.D. Hayworth. So it's really, you're the one that I would trust your opinion of it. Whether they or not can do that, I would hope they could. Why Jan Brewer is important right now, why she made this stance, because of Hillary Clinton being the 2016 nominee, and all we're seeing for the presidential candidates from the Republican are men, there is a given that more than likely the VP candidate will be a woman. That's why Jan Brewer doing this is so important. But here's the other side of it. I think that they will try and mount some sort of protest against what Jan Brewer's veto is. But here's the ironic thing in this whole bill. This was almost word for word the same bill that Bill Clinton back in '93 signed in about religious freedom.
We heard, we got to run real quick. That was an excellent point. We heard JD mention something similar about Chuck Schumer. Thanks so much for being here, Scottie. We'll have to have you back again. When we come right back, we'll